I'm thinking about what type of man I want to be. Like, how do I want to wear my masculinity? I have a chance to reinvent myself, right? And so I'm like, what kind of person do I want to be? I want to be reliable. I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be a man of my word. I want to be someone that people can trust with their kids. I want to be kind and emotional. And as I'm getting more and more fucked up, I'm less and less of those things. I did not agonize over my gender for decades and wait a year and a half to see an endocrinologist to start taking hormones and deal with the rejection of someone that I thought loved me forever, and deal with the frustration and the embarrassment when people misgendered me and misnamed me, to finally get to this point where I am externally looking like the person that I've always known on the inside, to get to this point where it all feels so good to.
Today, we're joined by Shane Diamond, a powerhouse speaker, writer, and advocate who's walked through addiction, transition, heartbreak, and found healing, not in spite of who he is, but because of it. So if you're new here, hit follow, subscribe, and share this conversation, because these are the voices saving lives, and every listen counts. Let's go. Shane Diamond, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I am absolutely thrilled and excited to have you here.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
So I'm going to dive right in with you. I want to know and start by asking you, what is the question that no one ever asks you, but you really wish that they would?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. Personally, professionally, anecdotally.
Whatever is the most important answer to you.
My favorite icebreaker is always, what's your favorite sandwich? Because I think your favorite sandwich says a lot about a person.
Yeah.
So my favorite sandwich is a Reuben. Nice. Like a good Jew. But I want a meat to bread ratio that's 4-to-1.
Meat.
4 times the meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want a thin, wimpy little Reuben.
No.
Yeah.
I also don't want, I need the carbs, but also I need the protein, because
I just don't want to eat bread. Give me a good sandwich.
You don't want the bread. You don't want
I'll eat the bread, but that's not why I'm here. You know what I mean?
No, I'm right there with you. If I have an option, I'm going to add at least 2 extra protein add-ons.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Great answer. I love that. But I want to ask you a second time, or a second way. Is there something from the heart level of you that, or from identity, or from, any of the parts of you, right, that you feel like don't get asked?
I think one of the ones that I would love to hear more is, what can I help you with? And just sort of open, what can I help you with? I'm the person who has a plate full, and the solution, of course, is not to get a bigger plate. It's how can we take things off the plate? Well, I'm at capacity with my full plate. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I say yes to things, and I like to be helpful, and I like to be of service, and I will do the things. And I think sometimes it's really nice to hear, what can I help you with? And trust that person, when you say, can you help me by taking out the trash, or, can you put a grocery list together for me, or, can I bow to this meeting and you can take it? Knowing that the people that ask the questions, you can trust them that they're going to follow through on what they offer.
Yeah.
Not that I don't get that, but I think I would love to. I'm manifesting that.
I love that. I'm going to manifest that for myself too.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Thanks.
Good job. Okay, 2 points here. So you grew up in Taos,
Yeah.
New Mexico. Leave it to me to completely butcher.
No. It's a Tiwa word.
Tiwa.
Mm-hmm. It's the tribe out there.
Wow.
So it is not an English word. So you're okay.
I'm going to get an education today. And thank you for giving me some grace. So it's a place that you once called Carpe Mañana Country.
Yes.
What did growing up in that culture give you, and what did it miss?
Growing up in Taos was beautiful. Some people are very familiar with the name and some people aren't. It's an idyllic ski town in the center of New Mexico, in the northern part, like 45 minutes south of Colorado. And, the town is at 7,000 feet. The ski area is at 9. And it's been a ski town since like the 50s. And it has a reputation for being like artists and skiers and hippies, and a guy out there started building houses into the sides of the earth in like the 80s probably.
How cool.
And it's like the houses are made of like beer cans and soda cans and tires, and they're like solar, and they use gray water. And so like if you want to live off the grid and want to just like have your own space and do your own thing, Taos is a beautiful place to do that.
Huh.
My dad moved out in the 60s to be a ski patrolman, and he was terrible at it. And so he opened a law firm, and he's been doing that since. And my mom and my dad met on a blind date in Connecticut, New York. Both Jews trying to get fixed up like our people do. And my mom moved out to be with my dad. They got married, had 2 kids, and got divorced. And she stayed in Taos so that we would know both parents, and like I have too been divorced. I don't have kids, but I can't imagine what that was like to make that choice, to be like, this is not the person for me, but my relationship to my kids is more important. And Taos is beautiful, and it's so easy to fall through the cracks. My high school class, like many high school classes, started with 300 kids, and we graduated 150. And that's pretty standard, to lose half the kids between 9th grade and 12th grade to drunk driving, gang violence, dropouts.
In Taos, or
in Taos?
The reason why I'm clarifying is I was homeschooled my entire life, so I don't know high school statistics on lots of things. But wow.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to lose that many kids between 4 years. Like my high school had a daycare so that kids who got pregnant could still graduate from high school. And I went to college and I was like, oh yeah, daycare. And they're like, oh, for the teachers. And I was like, no, for the students. So there were so many opportunities, and you really had to dig for them and work for them. And if you didn't, it was very easy to just fall through the cracks, to make other choices, to lose touch a little bit.
So you mentioned previously that you participated in sports. I'm curious how, especially hockey, how those helped to shape your identity in those early years, and did it help prevent you from falling through the cracks?
One would think. It did, like, yes, and. My grandfather played ice hockey. He was he played one of the first games at the Yale Whale in Connecticut. He was a goalie, and this was like newspaper shin pads and like no face masks. And it was a different game. And so I grew up, and my parents put me in youth sports, put me and my sister in youth sports, the way that a lot of parents do, which is I have stuff to do, go run around, get dirty, make friends, learn how to be part of a team, how to be accountable, learn how to win and not be a jerk, learn how to lose and not be a jerk. Mm-hmm. And so I started playing soccer when I was a kid. There was like pretty vibrant youth soccer in Taos. And soccer season ended and everybody went to go play hockey. And I was like, well, I want to play hockey. There was outdoor ice, still is, but like in those early days, it was like in the park, and all the parents would go pull the weeds, this like open air rink. They would lay the refrigeration. Someone's dad would stand out there with a hose for like 3 days to like freeze the ice. And I was like, I want to go play hockey. And my mom made me take a year of figure skating lessons. And I insisted upon wearing hockey skates for figure skating lessons. And then I was off to the races, and that was over 30 years ago. And then, in high school, I played soccer, hockey, and tennis. And it certainly, it was a regimen. I had a schedule. I had things that I had to do. I had people I was responsible to. And what that meant was that I was partying with all of my sports friends. And because I was a good athlete and I was a good student and we were, partying on the weekends, we kind of got away with it, because like nothing else was slipping.
Right. That happens a lot with athletes, especially ones that are shining, that do well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Taos is the kind of town where like today still, I don't know that you can get an Uber.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Like there might be like 4 Uber drivers in Taos.
Is it one of those things where like culturally everybody there would be like, oh, that's so established. What is that word?
Yeah, like establishmentarianism.
It's too many syllables for me.
No, I think it's just people would rather drive drunk and not have to rely upon an Uber. New Mexico had the highest rate of single car fatalities in the country for a while. Wow. And so, we would like, everyone would drive drunk. We'd go to parties and you knew the cops would be on the back roads, like looking for all the drunk kids driving. And so we would drive on the main roads and you set your speedometer for 4 miles over the speed limit. Because if you're going the speed limit, like who goes the speed limit?
Right.
So it's like, I'm over enough that I'm look like I'm
normal.
Yeah, I'm normal, but like I'm not speeding. And I was really lucky. I was just really, really lucky that I didn't get into more trouble.
Wow.
Because we were all doing the same thing.
Looking back at those years playing hockey, especially on boys teams, what kind of identity did you feel like you were forming, even if you didn't have the words for it yet? That's
such a fun question. And this is such a fun medium to tell this story because we're taping this.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's live.
It's live. Oh my gosh, it's live. Okay. Yeah. Can we swear on this live show?
You can.
I have
broke the third wall. No, just kidding.
I have a deep voice. I'm sitting here. I have a mustache. I didn't necessarily grow up as a boy. I was the only girl on the boys' teams. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I came out as transgender. And so for so long, I was the only girl in all of these boys' spaces. And I really played with a great group of guys. There were maybe 6 or 7 of us that were all the same age. And so we stayed on the same teams, like from when we were like mites to senior of high school. And so I got really close with these guys. They're like my brothers. And I changed in the locker rooms with them, and it wasn't weird because I think I hit on 1 or 2 of them like once, but that wasn't what it was about. It was like, these were my guys. And for the most part, they weren't like harder on me because I was the only girl. And they really stood up for me when the other teams would go after the only girl. And my dad used to say that I was a player with the ponytail but no mustache, because I grew up with a kid who had a ponytail and a mustache. And I think looking back, I felt so different. Like I was one of the guys, but I wasn't. Mm-hmm. Like I felt like one of the guys, but they never really treated me like one of the guys because I was always the girl that was there. And this was like the late 90s, early aughts, and I think we all did our best. I was just back in New Mexico and I ran into my old high school coach. And he was like, oh, have you, I was just talking to X, Y, and Z guy. Like, do you still talk to him? And I was like, why in the world would I talk to that guy? He was a jerk 20 years ago. There's absolutely no reason for me to be in touch with this guy.
And his name and
no.
Social Security number are...
Yeah, seriously. No, I'm petty, but I don't know if I'm that petty. I probably am. And so it also meant that when I came out to these guys as trans years later, nobody was particularly surprised. They were like, oh yeah, this tracks. But for a while I was the only girl on the team. I was the only girl for a year maybe who was playing high school hockey in the state. And I had to work really hard. I'm 5'7". I played with a guy who was 6'7", and full contact hockey, and he was a gentleman about it. He would never check me. He would just place me into the boards. Mm-hmm. His stick was taller than I was.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think, the joke that I make is that I was 10 in 1997, which is the same year that the Titanic movie and Ellen DeGeneres came out.
Oh, wow.
And it was like arguably bigger news that a lesbian, like someone could be a lesbian and funny than like, the Titanic movie. And so looking back, I think I knew something was different about me. I wasn't a regular girl, but I also like wasn't one of the regular guys. But we didn't have this language to describe gender and identity and experience and
there was
what
language.
It means to be trans.
There was language, but there wasn't any that, what I'm getting at is that the language that existed was not the kind that we would use for...
No, like we were playing Smear the Queer, right? Which is like all out football assault, and like we didn't think anything of it at the time, but there's all this subtle homophobia, transphobia just embedded in what is... I don't know, kids being kids, from what we're taught.
Yeah.
And so, like if I'd had the language, would I have come out sooner? Maybe, but we didn't. So I didn't.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, while being trans isn't part of my story, coming out as gay was all like same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned chaos and your mom's early alcoholism to me in a separate conversation. So I want to shift to that in the part of talking about family and diving deeper into personal life. What was your emotional survival strategy as a kid in that environment?
I was talking to my mom last night. I FaceTimed her and my sister because they're together right now. And, she was like, don't be too hard on me. And like we had a conversation a couple years ago where she really apologized again for what our early childhood was like. She got sober when I was 10. And I said to her a couple years ago, I was like, listen, now being sober, like I have so much more empathy for both the chaos that was around you when you were still drinking and using, and how hard it is in early sobriety to like get your shit together in any capacity. And here you are in a small town with your ex-husband and your 2 little kids. Like I have so much more empathy and grace and appreciation for how hard you worked, even though like life is a mess at that point. I think, someone said recently that like, it's because I'm a Scorpio that I was able to to make it through all of that, just like fiercely independent. It was broken plates and smashed phones, and I remember just trying to protect my sister at certain points. Not that there was any violence or anger directed at us, but just like so much unhappiness. And my mom tells a story that like she got sober when I was 10. So before I was 10. I asked if I could make her martini one night, and she was like, "Oh no." To be totally honest, I don't have a ton of memories of early childhood other than loud and, trying to stay out of the way and trying to, my sister and I would try to control a situation around my mother, knowing that something could set her off at any point, and how could we prevent that from happening for her. And simultaneously,
when you say set her off, because obviously people are different.
Yeah.
We're both in recovery, so we're very familiar. There are different types of addicts, alcoholics when we're,
Yeah.
So did she have a specific leaning, you were talking about some things that sound like aggression towards inward feelings, or what, getting upset, but like, she tend to get angry most of the time. Was it a like instant depression, sob fest?
Yeah.
Or was
it was like, my mom's an Aries, so it's like big energy. I'm also married to an Aries, so I like I speak this language now, but it's like big energy first, reaction, and then sort of taking a pause after that, like after you've had this big reaction. And so just being aware that like there could be anything that would cause a big reaction at any point. And so we would try to control the situation and like loud. We're Jewish, we're loud. We're alcoholics, we're loud. So loud and like external and again, like never violent, never physical, but just anger, like an outburst of anger. And then trying to like...
Wait, so let me ask you, because it's my job to ask the question that I think that the audience member is asking themselves in their head right now. If I put myself in their shoes, they're going, but Shane, you just talked about broken cell phones, broken plates, broken this, but you're saying that no violence.
Well, I don't want to tell her story too much, right? Like my mom has her own story of recovery and like her own journey. And I think she is grappling, as we all do, like with the decisions of our past and things we may have done differently. So I don't want to spend too much time like harping on her or like what her journey may have been. I never felt unsafe as a kid. We just tried to stay out of the way a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like now as an adult, right, I'm learning how to take up space, and I'm learning that like I can't control any situations around me. I can't control anyone's reaction to anybody or anything, you know? And so like if I'm with anybody and someone, you know, is angry, gets set off, says something, has an outburst, like there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do to prevent that. There's nothing I can do to like smooth over the situation once it happens. And, you know, I've been talking about this like in recovery and in therapy for a minute.
How long have you been trying to
control the world around me?
And then when did you finally realize that it wasn't actually, it was all an illusion the whole time?
Oh God. This year I'll have 6 years of sobriety, and I work a program, and it was like maybe 3 years ago that I was like, oh, like I can't control anything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like a muscle that I have to keep working, because it's so easy to default to the like, you know, like default to the software settings.
Yeah. So I grew up with a dry drunk parent, rager. And and then another parent who taught me codependency and people pleasing 101.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love people pleasing. Mm-hmm. It's my goal for 2025.
Yeah.
It's not to people please.
So no matter how much work I've done and, you know, stuff like the fact that you brought that up, I'm just like, yes, that's one of those things that I'm trying to get honest with people about, that like, I speak all the time when I tell my story or on this platform or others that I take up space on about all the, you know, the work or suggestions that I have about, you know, healing from those things and those wounds. And I bring this side of my story up because I think it is so important, what you just said, that my illusion was like, there's an amount of work that I can do that will, unlike my alcoholism, which needs maintenance for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The people pleasing and the codependency will achieve graduation status at some point.
I'm crossing my fingers. Like we could all hope. Yeah.
And God, how pious. Like, yeah. I mean, so yeah, it's sneaky. And yeah. It's one of those things where you may not have, you know, addiction that is in your immediate or like family orbit, or you might not struggle with it. But like, God, when we start talking about people pleasing codependency, especially people who may not understand, like everybody's got a tinge of it.
Yeah.
I feel like for the most part. So it's that one thing that really can help bring people together and just level the playing field real quick.
Yeah. I mean, and that was like kind of my relationship with my dad, was that it was like, what could I do to impress him to get attention and affection? And like, I don't remember ever when you're a kid, you get sick and it's like, you want to stay home and like you watch The Price is Right and you have a parent who like brings you tea or whatever. Like, I don't remember ever getting sick at my dad's house. And it's not to say that like I didn't get sick there, but like the nurturing parent was my mother. And, and I think the other thing that I'm like learning through this program is through my work, and we talk about people pleasing, is like also having right-sized expectations of people. That if I've known someone my entire life and they've behaved the same way my entire life, like why am I expecting them to behave differently now? And being able to not try to control how someone is going to react to me or treat me or behave with me. And then, and like I said, at 10, when I was 10, my sister was 8, my mom got sober, and we grew up in the rooms. There was a meeting by the old grocery store, and it was a hodgepodge of chairs. The steps and traditions are on the wall. I remember at one point, like there was a row of seats that had been taken out of a minivan, and that was like one of the seats in the AA room.
That sounds about right. Were they still smoking in the rooms?
They might have been. I went to a meeting back in Taos a couple of years ago, and it was during COVID. It was outside, and there was like the circle of people, and then around the perimeter, everybody was just smoking, like the second circle around the meeting.
Oh, see that? I feel like out west, y'all probably got healthy quicker when it came to the smoking aspect of things. I mean, like most AA meetings here, we were smoking in them until 2000. When did that start fizzling out? Pun intended. I don't know. Like
I mean, that sounds like
between
the dream
2011, 2016.
Oh, recently.
Sometime between but it's crazy to think, because like now you don't.
Oh, you're shunned.
Yeah, no. But I don't smoke anymore, but yeah.
Yeah. No, so I don't remember if that was a smoking meeting or not, but like, and this was before Game Boys. And so my mom would sit us there and be like, sit here, don't listen. And I knew the Serenity Prayer before I knew what I was saying. I knew the 12 steps before I knew what they meant. And I remember like there was an AA Thanksgiving that happened every year, and my mom would bring like 2 or 3 turkeys to the AA Thanksgiving, like a big meeting, and people could eat. And I was like, oh, like, why are all of your friends sober? I get it. You have to go to meetings, blah, like, just get over it. Like you don't drink, blah, like as a kid. And now I'm like, oh shit. A lot of my friends are sober. Most of my friends are sober. And like, yes, if there was an AA meeting, Thanksgiving, whatever, like I would totally bring 2 turkeys, because this is what we do for each other now. But as a kid, I just had no understanding of service in that way. So she also really modeled that for me too, especially when she was in early sobriety.
That's beautiful. Growing up around the recovery language before fully understanding it, or even being able to fully understand it, how did that shape your view of struggle and healing later in life?
So I played college hockey. I was very fortunate. I played 4 years of varsity ice hockey on the women's team. And we had a 24 or 48 hour rule, which means you couldn't drink 24 hours before a practice or 48 hours before a game, which meant we could only drink 1 day a week, right? Because if we practice for 5 days and then we have games on Saturdays, it's like Saturday night you go hard because you don't have anything on Sunday. And that was we're athletes. We go hard on our one night off.
Yeah, 100% BAC.
Yeah. And like, oh my God, in college I did like a 3-story beer bong at one point. I was like so proud of myself. What? Yeah. It came like down a stairwell. It was like 4 or 5 beers. I was so proud of myself. I threw up immediately.
Of course.
And then kept drinking.
I'm so fascinated.
There was a year where we only had, on a hockey team, we have like 18 skaters, and we had some injuries and some like people in other seasons. And our coach was like, we had like 12 skaters, maybe 15 skaters. And our coach was like, please don't drink. like, we just don't have time for you to like not be fully recovered when you show up to practice on Monday. And we were like, yeah, sure. And so a bunch of us would like snort painkillers. And now I'm like, this is not better. But we were like, we deserve this. This is our day off. Or I'll say, I deserve this. This is my day off.
Yeah.
And so in college, I was like, I'm just a college student. I'm just college drinking. Mm-hmm. And then I graduated from college and I was like, 22. I founded a nonprofit at 22.
Oh, wow.
It was a nonprofit that uses theater to teach consent and sexual assault prevention to high school and college students. It was amazing. They're still going.
Yeah. Wow. What's it called?
It's called Speak About It. I'm actually going back to Maine in June for the 15-year anniversary, which just feels
that is amazing.
Wild. But I thought I was Don Draper. Like, I had a bar in my office. Like I had flasks and I had a fridge with beer, and I'm like, okay, in my early 20s, I was like, I'm still drinking like a college student. When will I grow out of this? I think I recognized even then this was an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but it was so normalized in college.
Right.
And now as like a young adult.
You made it through college.
I made it through college.
And then obviously had a professional career, founded a successful nonprofit.
Yes.
I would venture to guess a high-functioning alcoholic.
High-functioning alcoholic.
How?
I'm
always so curious because I was not able to achieve that.
Yeah, no, I was high functioning. I'm like self-employed. I'm 22. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And
nobody does it.
Yeah, right. Like, oh my God, like zero frontal lobe. Yeah. Like I have no understanding of long-term consequences. And I realized early that like, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm sitting in my pajamas. I hate everyone. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, it's because I've been up. All I've had to eat today is coffee. And like, I've been working. And so I put some rules in place for myself that was like, I'm not going to start work until I've had a cup of coffee. And as soon as I have a drink, I'm done working for the day. And what that meant was I was trying to set myself up so that I couldn't make drunk decisions for the business. Mm-hmm. And B, it meant that happy hour was every day. And I got earlier and earlier because I was the cool boss. I was like, I'm trying to have a meeting with someone. Why don't we go out for a drink at 4? Because then you can come out of work. It's still a work meeting, but you get to drink. And I just get to start my habits sooner. And then I would stop working for the day, but it was like became an all the time thing. And when I made financial amends to the nonprofit, I was like, listen, it's a small nonprofit. And we would do fundraisers. I would get up on the bar, make my little fundraising speech, and then I would drink on the company's dime. And so when I got sober, I made a financial amends to the nonprofit because I had drank so much money when I was in charge. And we did good work, and I worked with really smart people, and I kept it separate. Although I shared this was like before WeWork was a thing. I shared an office with a bunch of other people, and someone walked in at 11:00 on a Thursday morning, and I was drinking a beer, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be fine. Just let me get over this, and it'll all be fine."
So that's a perfect segue to the question that I had. Knowing that you're now in recovery, things only go one way.
Yeah. No one comes into recovery
us.
On a winning streak. Yeah. Right.
So could you describe for me what the evolution of your, I'm assuming the start time and the 4 p.m. happy hour, those started.
Yeah.
The time in between started getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. It's so, I had a therapist when I first got sober who was also queer and also sober. And I'll never forget this. She's like, when you go to a doctor's office and there's a checklist and it's like, if you have these 10 things, you might have cancer. Mm-hmm. And you look at the checklist and you've got one of the things and you're like, oh my God, I have cancer. And then there's a checklist that says, if you have these 10 things, you might be an alcoholic. And you look at it and you're like, well, I only had 9. So I can't possibly be an alcoholic. And
I've never heard that comparison before. And wow, does that resonate?
Yeah.
The delusion.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not a morning drinker. I I have a house, I have a job. Like I can't possibly be an alcoholic because like, look at all these cash and prizes around me. And I met my ex-wife in 2014 and she was so hot and so mean. And, and, in like, we got married at the end of 2016 and at the, like sort of around that time, I was like, I think I'm trans, you know, I'm like sort of stepping into this more. I had, you know, was doing some work and had a therapist and she was like, that's fine, you know, like be trans. She wanted me to change my name in our wedding vows. And I was like, my uncle will have a heart attack if I like all of a sudden am Shane in the wedding vows. And I remember saying to her at one point, like, I think we drink too much. I think we have too much wine. Like, I can't tell you how many TV shows we watched and I like didn't remember the end of it. And she was like, you can stop drinking, but like, I'm not going to. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna stop drinking. Like, but I do this by myself. And before our wedding, we had been like, they also like, someone said to me, like, as soon as you start talking about cocaine in your share, like as an alcoholic, it's like, you can tell you're getting close to the end. And,
I've never heard somebody like that comparison before, but like how true.
Yeah.
I'm like, you just took me back to my own. I'm like, oh
no. So she was like, we got married in Maine and I'd been like sort of hoarding cocaine in the lead up. And she was like, please just don't do coke before the wedding. Don't do it before the ceremony, which is like a completely reasonable thing to say to someone. And I remember doing blow before the wedding, before the ceremony. And I thought to myself, and I was like, this isn't foreshadowing, is it? And it was foreshadowing. I came out as trans. She turned out to be not as supportive as she initially was. And early transition is so hard. It's, you know, I started going by Shane. I started using male pronouns and my face didn't look like Shane. My face didn't look like someone that you would see and would assume that they use male pronouns. And it's heartbreaking and devastating every time. And speaking of like things you can't control, like no matter how hard I will myself, I cannot, like you can't make your facial hair grow faster. You can't make your voice drop faster. And she got really mean and really unsupportive. And we were seeing a couples therapist and the couples therapist looked at my ex-wife and said, you hate him. Like what you're describing is hatred. And the couples therapist looked at me and said, and you get to decide if you want to be with someone who hates you. And I didn't think I deserved anything better. I was like, she's so beautiful and so mean. And like, this is what I get. This is what trans people deserve.
So because I work in the space that I do in mental health, I'm just going to translate something here that the audience may not have picked up on. You understand the word hate. Mm-hmm. And you, audience, understand the word hate. What you may not understand is that for a licensed therapist to get to the place where they actually stand in assessment of an individual's existence and emotional, and naming it themselves, especially in a couple like that, there's a lot underneath whatever was going on that you didn't touch on. So I want to give reverence for the fact that, you're sharing what you feel like is part that you want to share, but what you experienced was absolutely to the depth. Not to shame this other person or what have you, but when a therapist says you hate your husband, like, wow.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was that you were experiencing from on that other end, and I don't know what you were giving back. Also, there's two sides to every coin, but at the same time, again, a licensed therapist is saying you hate your spouse. Mm-hmm.
It was in the context of intentionally withholding love and affection. And yeah, that was a lot to sit with. And so I did what I knew how to do as an alcoholic, and I had an affair. And I had an affair with someone that I met at a work conference who, again, I'm early in transition. It's like less than a year. And she saw me as a man. And she was like, yes, like I see you in your transness and you're handsome and beautiful and like all the things that I wasn't getting, I got from this total stranger. And had an affair and lied about it and got caught in the lie and said I had ended it and didn't end it and got caught in the lie again and was betrayed by one of my closest friends at the time. And May of 2018, I went out to dinner with my ex-wife. She asked for a divorce. I was like, no, we can do this. We can make it through. She asked for a divorce. And the next day, I met the person who took over my nonprofit. And in September of 2018, I had stepped down from my nonprofit that I built from the ground, and I was legally divorced. And so these two things that had been such big parts of my identity had now, like, the rug was just pulled out from underneath me.
So do you...
Or I pulled the rug out from underneath me.
I was going to say, so do you care to share the circumstances, brief or however in detail, of that person that took over your nonprofit? Because you weren't sober yet.
No,
right?
no.
So what's happening there?
Yeah. First of all, the person who took over my nonprofit, and they became the executive director, and then they took a year off, and someone that had worked with me since 2011 became the executive director. And I love both of them dearly, like close friends. And actually the part of the reason that I turned the organization into a nonprofit was to create a structure that wouldn't need me to be at the heart of it. So when we incorporated as a nonprofit in 2012, that was the beginning of my exit strategy. That this was a thing that was so much bigger and more important than me, than one person. How could I institutionalize as much knowledge as I had so that you could remove the charismatic founder and the thing would still exist? And so I said in May of 2018, when I finally met the person who took over as executive director, we had been, as a nonprofit with my board, had been talking about this for a year, had like done a nationwide search and like really put some policies in place. And I'd been doing like a huge download. And so it was actually a really beautiful, easy, intentional transition to bring this new person in and for me to step out. And I think the nonprofit is still around, right? And this is like 7 years ago. So it was all on good terms. It was like very, very smooth, very easy, lots of love. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it was paving the way for you to start taking care of yourself.
One would think.
Oh, da-da-da.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so.
I feel like this is where we cut the episode and we're like, stay tuned for next week.
Yeah, no. I'm like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious though, what was was there a next stage? Because if you take away that significant other, and I say that significant other, not to not acknowledge the marriage, but like in a category that everyone can relate to, right? Like there's this, because so for so many of us who are in an addict state, the significant other is either enabler or roadblock or vessel, if we want to, and then also something else that was like, so was there a even further downfall that we were talking about?
This was after? Like the beginning of the circling of the drain.
Yeah.
So I had all my shit together at this point, aside from the like drunken affair and the lying and, being in a partnership where I didn't feel supported. So
at
this
just point, all day.
Like who hasn't, am I right? And so at this point, my nears and dears were like, take a break. You know, you played 4 years of college hockey, which is not easy. You know, it's intense. You went right into founding a nonprofit that was sexual assault prevention, like intense work. And you've just gone through a divorce and you've stepped aside from this thing. Like, take a break, you know, like fuck off for a little while. And I took a road trip with a friend of mine. It was actually the last time I was in Nashville, was when we drove across the country. And, I got back to Maine. I got a job at LL Bean, the outdoor company.
Oh yeah, no, I love
the flagship stores.
I love LL Bean. I can't remember the last time I ordered something from there. Yeah. I have had periods of my life where I liked clothing items there. Anyway.
Yeah. So the flagship LL Bean stores in Freeport, Maine.
Okay.
It's open 24/7.
Whoa.
And they're always looking for people during the holidays to like have extra hands.
Yeah.
And so I applied to work at LL Bean. I also applied to be a mascot for the local semi-pro hockey team because I was like, nothing matters, right? Like my resume doesn't matter for either of these jobs. And so I was folding shirts at LL Bean like through the winter holiday season, and nobody knew my last name. I was just Shane D. Nobody knew that I was trans. It's so funny. They like when you work at LL Bean, you have your little name tag, and everybody's name tag is like, I'm Shane. I enjoy like sports thing. And I was like, oh great. Like I enjoy ice hockey. And they were like, no, you have to pick from this list of things that like of clothing, of sporting goods that we offer at LL Bean. So it was like, I enjoy cross country skiing. I enjoy whatever. And so I said, I'm Shane. I enjoy paddling. And I stole that name tag and it's on my fridge. So I was like, little do you know. So I worked at LL Bean and I was a mascot for a semi-pro hockey team. And at LL Bean, they were like, you're really good at this. Do you want to be a manager? And I was like, nope, I quit. And took a job as the communications director for Maine's equality organization. And around this point, I started dating someone new, who is a very talented, accomplished drag queen in Portland. And I lived 3 blocks from the gay bar. And when I bought my condo in like 2013, this is before Uber really. And so I bought a condo that was close enough to downtown Portland that I could walk home shit-faced because there wasn't, like I wasn't going to get in a car. I was
That's
still,
smart.
Right? So
I mean, if you're going to
base your life around your drinking.
If you're going to base your life around your drinking, base your life around your drinking.
Yeah. So I was like, this is great. I can just walk home. I don't have to catch a car. Like at this point I was like a queer woman. So I was like, this is fine. So it happened to be 3 blocks from the gay bar. And I went from like having been in there once or twice to like spending all of my time at the gay bar. And that's not why I'm an alcoholic, right? I'm an alcoholic because I have a curious mental blank spot. I have an allergy. I have the mental obsession. And it just so happened that I spent a lot of time in the gay bar. Like it's not the bar's fault.
Right.
And bars in Maine close at 1. And then without fail, we would bring everybody back to my apartment, and I had this fully stocked bar, and we would keep partying. And I saw more sunrises in that we dated for about a year in that relationship than ever before. And again, it was normalized. Like I'm with all these people, like everybody's staying out late, like we're doing bad cocaine because by the time it gets to Maine, like gross. And I think about like all of the things that I hear in meetings where people are like, oh, I'm drank because I drank because I was gay.
Right.
And that was so hard. And I'm like, you sad fucks. Like, that's so hard for you. And now I'm like, oh my God, I drank not because I'm trans necessarily, but because I could go to the gay bar and I was just one of the guys. I was just another gay man at a gay bar. And I felt like I could just be myself for the first time, especially like after the divorce and after the rejection, that I could just go to this place and they would see me and welcome me for exactly who I was.
Yeah. When you said, because I can't help but reflect back to my own experiences as you go through your story, anybody goes through their story, and you talk about, I saw many sunrises. Looking back, do you have how would you describe those sunrises felt to you?
Oh God. It's like, there's a difference when you have to get up and the sun is rising. Like if you're getting up for an early flight and you're like, okay, it's the middle of the night. Like I'm getting up, it's the middle of the night. The sun isn't even up yet. Oh, it's creaking up. Like I'm doing a thing because I'm making a choice to get up this early, versus I'm so fucked up and now the sun is starting to peek through the curtains and I'm so embarrassed and ashamed that my next day is going to be ruined. Like there's a certain amount of like anonymity that you get at night. It's, you know, like it's dark, it's back alleys.
There's not as much shame.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I didn't feel as much. But that flip of, and again, I'm going to show my ignorance, which isn't rare, but, so I don't know geographically if this is different where, you know, across the country, and where you were. Here, I remember, because mine wasn't cocaine. Mine was Adderall, but I mean, it's uppers, you know, and I was doing it alone at this point. Cause it was, I mean, even my buddies were like, you okay? And I was like, oh, you're asking questions. You got to go. It wasn't so like birds here. This is how I remember it. I would hear the birds before I would see the light. And for me, it was the sound of birds chirping that was, I immediately associated with this shame like nothing else. The shame of all the things I said, like yesterday I couldn't do or show up for because I was being too irresponsible. And I said, you know, I made all the choices to push it off. All of that, the fact that I said I wasn't going to do this again, and you know, all the things, right? The new day turning over, like what you just described, like that sound for me, and then the follow up of seeing the sun, and the ways that you experience the two different things. It's not just daytime; it's daytime versus nighttime. It's that immediate flip of. And you can't deny. I mean, there's all kinds of things in active addiction we can deny. I don't know that there was any point that I like tried to argue my way through my mind of being like, it's not normal. Really like the sun's just rising early today. Like, you know, I mean, like that was one thing. I don't know. It's weird saying that. Cause I'm like, I think I like bullshitted my own brain. Yeah. And my perception just about everything else, but that one thing, nope. Yeah. I could never.
It's, even if I go to bed at 4:30 or if I went to bed at 4:30, it's like, it's still nighttime because it's still dark.
Right.
And then as soon as that sun comes up, it's like, I've wasted this night, you know? And like, I feel it's like I imagine like sort of like someone creeping out like a, you know, like a golem creeping out from like under the cave or whatever, or like a vampire when the sun starts to hit, you're just like, you know, and like, that's how I was in those mornings. And it's like, I'd wake up, I'd let my dog out, my like poor, like perfect angel dog who was just like, where have you been all night? You know, I remember like the 4th of July, 2018. No. 4th of July, 2019. Like we got fucked up in my neighbor's apartment. So I'm like literally 2 doors down from where I live, and I've just like abandoned my dog, and the sun comes up and we're like still finishing up the blow. And I like walk next door to like let my dog out. And I think I went back to the apartment and just like kept partying. And I'm like, this is fine. I'm not doing this by myself. I'm not an alcoholic because I'm not alone.
That part,
you know? And like now, right, one of my best friends is a part owner of a gay bar in New York City. And like sometimes I bartend for him and I don't feel any pull to drink. But I get home at like, bars close at 4 in New York City. So I get home at like 4:35 and the sun is starting to come up and it feels different.
Yeah.
It feels different. I'm walking home sober. I've just intentionally stayed up until this point, and like
working, not like making concessions with your morality.
Yeah. And so at this point too, right? So we're now like summer of 2019. I've been on hormones for 2.5 years. I'm starting to have a dude face. And I'm thinking about what type of man I want to be. Like, how do I want to wear my masculinity? And I'm thinking about like, who are the masculine role models, the men in my life that whose masculinity I want to emulate, and like, if I say that I have a chance to reinvent myself, right? And so I'm like, what kind of person do I want to be? And I called a friend of mine early in transition. I was like, how do you white dude today? Like, what is this like? And it like a straight cis white guy. And he was like, take every ounce of your privilege and give it away. And, as I'm like thinking about the type of man I want to be reliable. I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be a man of my word. I want to be someone that people can trust with their kids. I want to be, I want to be kind and emotional. And as I'm getting more and more fucked up, I'm less and less of those things. And I have a dear friend, still a friend, thankfully, that I've known for 15 years. And she and her wife were visiting Portland and I had plans to see them. They live in LA. I don't see them very often. And I'd gotten so fucked up the night before that I completely slept through this date that we had made. And that was one of the moments where I was like, this is not the person that I want to be. And I want to look back and be like, oh, I'm not that person. Like, I'm not the person that sleeps through, but like, I was that person, And I was like, I did not like agonize over my gender for decades and wait 1.5 years to see an endocrinologist to start taking hormones and deal with the rejection of someone that I thought loved me forever and like deal with the frustration and the embarrassment when people misgendered me and misnamed me to finally get to this point where I am externally looking like the person that I've always known on the inside, to get to this point where it all feels so good to ruin it and ruin the type of man that I've always wanted to be because I can't get out of my own way. And at this point, my mom was living in Maine. And like, she came over for dinner once a week. Like, we had a great rapport. Like, she's like one of my closest friends now.
Was she picking up on, she's sober at this point in recovery.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, I had a bottle of Captain Morgan in one of the my like sock drawer or something. And she found it and dumped it out and filled it with iced tea and then put it back. And so I like went out to this party and I was like, oh, I'm so cool. I have a handle of Captain Morgan's, and I take a sip of it and I was like, wait a minute, something is wrong. And so I came back and she was like, did you find your bottle? We had this whole conversation. So I think she was watching me make decisions. And as an alcoholic, that you can't force someone to get sober before they're ready. And so she was always there for me, and she was never forcing me she wasn't like, do you want to go to a meeting with me? I think you could use it. She was like, how's this working out for you? And I knew that I could use her as a resource whenever I was ready, whenever I needed it. And, I think my sister, my mom, some of my closest friends, some people that I worked with were really at this point starting to worry about me.
Yeah.
We started this off saying like, what's the thing that you wish people would ask you more? And it was like, can I help you? And I'm the person who always has it together, who's on time, who is, And like, this is all starting to fall apart around me and people are starting to get worried. And so I had, this was, so I go to a conference, July of 2019. I'm working for Maine's Equality Organization. And I go to this conference in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's a big gay conference. And I see a person at this conference who is so hot. Like, I see it, I'm like, oh my God, I have a snowball's chance in hell. This person is so hot. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to flirt with abandon because like I literally do not have a chance. And so I'm throwing everything out and, you know, I'm like, we'll see how this goes. And they were flirting back and we end up going out. I'm like drinking whiskey all night. I like meet some strangers in the Uber. And she's like, we've never been to a gay bar. We don't have our driver's licenses. I was like, don't worry about it. I'll get you in. Never been to Louisville. And I like get to the door of this gay club and I'm like, I'm sorry, this is my aunt and her boyfriend. Like, can you let them in? I'm in town. They want to visit me. You know, can you let them into the gay bar? And the bouncer was like, sure. And then I get them in and I leave them. Right. So like, this is how I was as an alcoholic. It's like so charming, you know, like, let me talk my way into anything. And so this person at this conference, so we're at this bar and we find each other and we start making out and we spend the night together and we were both like, great, this is gonna be a one night stand. Like we're at a conference. This is, you know, what happens at these like big gay conferences. And I was flying back to Maine and they lived in New York. And I stopped at LaGuardia and I was like, who knew LaGuardia was cute? And they were like, literally nobody says LaGuardia is cute. You just want to reach out to me. And I got back to Maine and I was like, this is the person I've been waiting for. Like this is, I can feel it in my gut, in my heart that like, I know this is my person. Mm-hmm. And so I call my therapist and I say, I know you've been waiting for this. I need to go to a meeting. I need to get sober. And she said, to be fair, I was always rooting for you to get sober, but I was never rooting for you to hit rock bottom. Mm. And that was July of 2019. And I pushed it off for a second and we had some friends over. I had my mom over for dinner. I was grilling pizza and a buddy of mine was like, it's a Sunday night and a drag queen. And she was like, if I get some blow, would you do blow? And I was like, if you get it before 8 p.m. because it's a school night. So I will do drugs with you before 8 p.m.
How responsible of you, Shane Diamond.
I was like, I'm going to be so smart about this. And then it's 4 a.m. We're on our second bag. We're watching some stupid Netflix movie. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And that was my last drink. And my therapist recommended a men's AA meeting that met at lunch in Portland, Maine. And because I was like, it was more than just a gay bar. It was a place where I felt like I could be myself, be a man, be one of the guys. And she was like, try a men's meeting. And so I go to this men's meeting at lunch and I tell my boss, I was like, I'm going out for lunch, whatever, bye. And I walk down and I walk in and I see a man that I know from the dog beach. And he welcomes me over and I sit next to him. And in the meeting, they say, are there any newcomers here? And I raised my hand. And for the first time I said, I'm Shane, I'm an alcoholic. And I burst into tears because I've listened to my mom say those same words for 20 years. And it's the first time that it felt true for me. And we did the serenity prayer. And it was the first time that I said the serenity prayer because I fucking needed it and not because I was just parroting back what I heard. And
I have to ask you, because there are a number of us who were exposed to AA before we ended up needing it and going.
Yeah.
And there's different reactions. When you first said that and then said this, introduced yourself as an alcoholic and then said the prayer, was there a feeling of shame or a feeling of peace? Right, because you had the example of the person you probably, I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, I'm not going to follow in those foot. That won't be me.
Yeah.
So which is it?
It was both, honestly. It was, I'm so embarrassed and ashamed that I let my life get here. And now I know I don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
But oh my God, I was so embarrassed. I was like, is there a back door that I can get in so that nobody sees me?
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admissions center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. So you talked about finding this men's meeting and it meaning so much to you and finally feeling like one of the guys. What do you wish more people understood about trans identity, especially in the context of recovery or personal growth?
I think that I'm an alcoholic because I'm an alcoholic. Because if we want to say it's genetic, if we want to say it's a predisposition, like me being an alcoholic, I think for me doesn't have anything to do with my gender identity. Mm-hmm. I think I maybe used my gender identity as an excuse to drink and behave irresponsibly.
Right.
I have a lot of feelings about AA, and I went to I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is a program of attraction rather than promotion. Like, we're not out here trying to sell it. If you like what you hear, the doors are always open in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not speaking on behalf of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Like, I'm one fucked up alcoholic who is constantly working on a way to make my life better.
Yeah.
So I went to my meeting this morning. I go to a meeting. It meets 7 days a week at 8 a.m. 8 days a week. 7 days a week at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And I have service commitments there. And that's been one of the ways that helps me stay in the center of the boat. And so this morning I was like, I'm going to be on a podcast about recovery, and I'm really fucking nervous. Like, I don't want to, I want to like do us right. Anyway, so I am an alcoholic in recovery who uses the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That being said, I have a lot of feelings about AA. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of things that I really love about AA, and there are a lot of things that like I really don't love about AA. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I really love about it is that when you step into an AA room, whether it's online or in person, you already know something about the other people there. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the benefit, the beauty of affinity groups. It's why we like queer spaces. It's why there are like all black spaces, right? It's why it feels good to be around other Jews. You don't have to explain this like inherent part of your identity. Mm-hmm. And there's something really special to me about queer AA. Because I can walk into any room of Alcoholics Anonymous and everybody knows that I'm a fucked up alcoholic just like everybody else. Yeah. And to walk into a room of queer alcoholics, it says, I'm a fucked up alcoholic just like you. And we have struggled with gender, with sexuality, with shame, with rejection, with guilt, with acceptance, with being bullied, you know, and all of that. Like, I don't have to explain to someone how hard it is to be a kid who grows up knowing you're different. Yeah. And the experience of a queer person and the experience of a gay person, the experience of a trans person, right? Like, we're not homogenous. That's good. Everyone's life is different. And so I think what I would say to people who have questions about like what it's like to be a trans person in recovery is like, on the one hand, like, I'm still just an alcoholic, you know, like I'm not all that different. what if we have terminal uniqueness? What is it like? We're egomaniacs with inferiority complexes.
Yeah.
So it's like, I am the biggest piece of shit in the room at any given point. And so like, A, I'm just another alcoholic, and B, like, my life is not, it doesn't mirror that of a cis person, you know, like even like making the choice to come be on this podcast with you, right? Like, I have traveled to a state that doesn't recognize my identity as a trans person. And like, this is a risk for me. And I don't want special treatment from anybody. When we talk about trans rights, like, I'm not asking for special rights. I just like, I want to be seen as a whole person.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. We've got a wonderful following, and we love and value each and every one of our audience members. But we've got a lot of people from around these parts that follow and or tune in, you know, and not everybody has the same experience that I think the East Coast and or West Coast affords people. One of the reasons why I think that GLAAD is so important and why this platform is so important is because of storytelling.
Yeah.
The humanization of trans individuals is happening in spaces more and more where it's easy for people to turn off because it's a liberal space, avoid because it's a liberal space. This isn't one of those spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my own feelings, views, experiences, all those things, right? But my show, this platform is not. And I think that it is extremely important, and I do my hardest, and our whole team does, on finding people from all walks of life, from all forms of things that we recover from, to talk to and talk about their experience. Our mutual friend, Jocelyn.
I love her.
One of my favorite people on the face of this planet.
I love her. Yeah.
Was one of the other trans people, and I'm trying to remember because I don't remember people. Her story is so dynamic around what she survived and the intricacies of how her trans journey is interwoven with everything, that it absolutely sticks out in my brain. I don't necessarily like, for the most part, I'm not checking off a box thinking, trans story, trans interview.
We're not trying to fill your quota.
And so I don't want to, if there's other people I'm missing, I don't want to say that, but like, there are specific stories that fit when they fit for us to bring in, and you're here for a purpose, a time, and a reason. All align for a reason and a purpose. So I say all that to say, thank you for braving the unknown to come here. There's no part of you that is giving victimhood of like wanting people to feel sorry for you about your experience. I'm grateful for you even giving me the perspective of what it's like. I mean, flying into an airport in a state, right? Like, I'm very aware of what's going on legislatively in our state right now, Shane. But when we talk about the levels of privilege that we walk in, I don't think about the fact that flying into an airport that doesn't, right, in a state that doesn't, yada, 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 and all the things that require your identity when you are going to be here for a snapshot of time. What
but
must go through your mind?
I do. You know what I mean? And like, first of all, I love you. And this is about storytelling. I'm sitting on the plane yesterday and I sit next to this this woman, and this is my fault because I have a face and that says talk to me. And we start talking about the lumbar support pillows that we both brought on the flight. I'm 37. And we end up having this conversation. She's like, oh, do you live in New York or do you live in Nashville? And I was like, I live in New York. And she was like, what are you doing out here? And I was like, I'm here for work. She was like, what do you do for work? And I'm like, I work in storytelling. She's like, oh, what are you doing out here? I was like, I'm going to be on a podcast. She was like, what's the podcast about? I'm like, storytelling. Because
what's the story?
Yeah. Like, I'm like, okay. Like I was in North Carolina for work not long ago and was in an Uber ride and was just like totally transphobed by the Uber driver, like 20 minutes into our 25-minute drive. And I'm like not out here like waving my little trans flags. Mm-hmm. Right. And at the end she was like, I think, it's just like a bacteria or like something that like the mother ate that makes people trans. And I was like, I'll get out right here. I'm good. Thank you very much. And so now when I travel, right, like when people ask me what I do, I usually say that I work in finance, which my sponsor, I love him to death, is like, that's dishonest. And I'm like, yes, comma, like I will eat this one, like I'll take it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not out here trying to be like, I'm here because I work at an LGBTQ nonprofit and I'm trans and I'm going to be on a podcast about recovery. Like I don't need to spill all these beans like on this flight. Right. We end up having a lovely conversation, but we talk about privilege, right? Like for our audience listening at home, I am cis assumed. So people look at me, they assume I'm cisgender, which is a privilege.
Which if you don't know means that they assume that Shane was born a male.
Right.
Assigned at birth.
Yes. When we say, thank you for that. Transgender, right? Trans means opposite. Mm-hmm. So it refers to someone whose gender identity, our internal sense of self, is different from our sex assigned at birth. So my internal identity is a man. I was assigned female at birth. So cisgender cis means same, on the same side as. Mm-hmm. So people assume that I was assigned male at birth, that I've been a dude my whole life. I'm white. I'm able-bodied. I'm athletic.
Blue eyes.
And my spouse says I shouldn't say this, but like I'm cute. And like that also is a privilege, And so yes, like coming to do this, there's a certain amount of risk that I assume, and I have an immense amount of privilege. Mm-hmm. All my documents have my chosen name, my legal name, all my documents say male. That said, like it is a crapshoot right now. But I do all this like cost benefit analysis and I chose to be here and, I'm happy to be here. Anyway, so to just back up a second, because I talked about that hot one night stand.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way, because I like, sometimes I like to sidestep, especially because this is I don't want to put you under the microscope and be like the trans person Shane, but also your experience is ever so important to humanize. Yeah. Like even the thing that you were just about to like lightly mention and then skip. I'm like, wait, no, that like, for the majority of people listening right now, we all need to hear, like, if you're willing to share. And I thank you. Because,
oh my God, no. And I say all the time too, like I'm professionally trans. I came out as trans while at the helm of my nonprofit. So the face of the company literally changed. Mm. And I have been publicly trans since the beginning. Mm. And I'm a public speaker, I'm an educator. And so I often say, like, please ask me any question that you have about being trans. Like, I would rather you ask me than the internet or Twitter. I'd rather you ask me than like the person you're waiting behind at the restroom. Mm-hmm. There are two questions I won't answer, but my answer will be, I'm not going to answer that, and here's why. Mm-hmm. So if you have any, as we go, I probably should have said this from the top, but like, please ask me all your trans questions. I was not elected the leader of the transes, so I cannot speak on behalf of all of us, but I can tell you about my experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. You're about to go lead into something. Yeah. I have a next question, but I don't want to cut you off if you.
No, I was just going to say that, I got sober in July of 2019, right after meeting the person that is now my spouse at that conference. We thought it was going to be a one night stand. We actually laugh about it all the time, that like it's almost 6 years later. And we're like, remember when we thought this was going to be a one night stand? And instead, like, I found the person I've been waiting for my whole life. And that's only because I'm sober. Like, this only works because I'm able to show up honestly and authentically. And I do a nightly 10th step with a friend of mine, which is like, have I been an asshole today? Do I owe any apologies? What can I do better? Have I like been of service to someone else? And like, oftentimes, like, I do owe apologies. I have to eat shit. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And I get to be in this amazing, beautiful, wonderful relationship because I'm able to show up authentically. And that is one of the gifts of being sober.
And there are so many.
Yeah.
You've talked about addiction in ways that really challenge surface level ideas. How do you personally explain what addiction feels like to someone who doesn't quite get it yet?
Did you watch Friends? Did you ever watch the show Friends? Okay, well, yeah, we're of the same generation, so like the young guns don't often know what I'm talking about. So there's an episode.
Wait, were you mistaking me for a Gen Z?
I was saying we are this. I'm an elder millennial at this point.
Me too.
I was just at a doctor's appointment.
We're the same age.
I was older than the doctor.
Oh God,
and
that's starting to happen for me too.
I'm here.
Yep.
And it was so hard for me to not be like,
when
how
you're
old
older
are
than
you?
the professional like licensed professional serving you.
I was like, wow, this is a turn. I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's an early episode of Friends where Monica dates this guy named Fun Bobby. And everybody loves Fun Bobby. Mm-hmm. And he is the spur of the moment, spontaneous, let's do something fun. Like, anything with Fun Bobby is going to be fun. And Fun Bobby is an alcoholic. And then he gets sober. And then they start calling him ridiculously dull Bobby. And he starts telling this story about no hardware stores being open past midnight in the village. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be ridiculously dull Bobby when I get sober. Like, I'm going to get sober and I'm going to be boring and I'm going to become a cat lady. No shade, but I don't like cats, so it would be really hard for me to become a cat lady. Like, I'm going to get sober. I'm going to be boring. I'm going to go to bed at 8:30. I'm going to have no friends. I'm going to have no interesting stories.
So you weren't worried about the hardware stores not being open past 12:30?
No, least of my worries. Yeah.
Okay. Telling
a story about watching paint dry, however, was a fear of mine.
Oh, gosh.
So I was so like, so I think that's a fear that we see AA in TV and films and it's often like a bunch of like sad fucks, like sitting in a room being like mopey, and it's not like that. My experience is not like that.
No. And also like minimal flowers to Hollywood, but just like the story never gets flushed out. Like if you see, oh, they finally got sober, it's like the pink cloud era, which is like the first month post sobriety, right? Like that is not it's the launching off, like the launch pad. So incomplete story is told on a regular basis, and that's where you were going. So.
Yeah, there is a good show called Mom.
Yeah. Oh my God.
With Allison Janney and Anna Faris. The first 2 seasons are crap. But it's such a good representation of like how AA works.
That's why I love
it's so good. I mean, I would watch Allison Janney like brush her teeth.
Same.
So I think there's that part of it, right? Which is that like the way that we are portrayed is that like sad, broken. And like I am sad and broken, but it's not because I'm an alcoholic. And I think I don't know how to quantify. When I got sober, I found a sponsor because that's what I was told to do. And I was angry at everything. Like I was angry at the wind. Like the wind was blowing and I was like, fuck you, wind. Like I was grilling and there were mosquitoes and I was like, get the fuck out of here, mosquitoes. And I was like, oh, I'm losing it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm angry at everything. Mm-hmm. And my sponsor was like, that's fine. Like, this is normal. You should be angry. You've had no feelings for 15 years.
Right.
And I came in and I was like, this is bullshit. If I lived in France, I wouldn't be an alcoholic. I would just be French. You know, like if I lived in Russia, I wouldn't be an alcoholic. I would just be Russian. They just drink vodka. And they were like, that's nice, but you don't live in France and you don't live in Russia.
Right.
And you live here. And so I think part of the assumption is, or my assumption about alcoholics was that like, it's comparative. And, you know, earlier we were talking about like high functioning versus low functioning alcoholics, and people talk about like high bottoms or low bottoms in their, when you realize that you're out of control. And similar to the way that I taught about sexual assault prevention is like the worst thing that's ever happened to someone is the worst thing that's ever happened to someone, even if it's different for different people. Mm-hmm. And so my bottom is going to be different from your bottom, but that doesn't mean that one is high or low or better or worse or more dramatic or less dramatic. It just means that we're two different people and we had to pull the ripcord at different points.
Right.
And for me, the understanding of what it means to be an alcoholic is that I cannot control everything. I cannot be the center of everything. And the more I try to control all of those things, the harder and worse it gets. Mm-hmm. And that is all that I was trying to do as an alcoholic. And, you know, it's like, if I'm walking around and I'm like, okay, I'm only going to drink on the weekends. I'm only going to drink beer. I'm only going to drink beer after 11. I'm going to go home when the bar closes. I'm only going to do cocaine on weekends. I'm not going to drink out of a flask. I'm only going to drink out of a flask, right? Like normal drinkers don't have these negotiations with themselves.
Right.
I do not understand how people can leave a half a glass of wine. I'm like, you're wasting money.
Yep.
You're leaving money on the table.
Even now I'm like,
what are you doing? Serious? Yeah. I'm like, how could you?
You're not an alcoholic, so.
Yeah. And that's like, I think for me, realizing I'm an alcoholic because I spent so much time convincing myself that I wasn't an alcoholic. And like normal drinkers, I don't think have these same conversations and negotiations with themselves.
Could not agree more. Was there something that falling in love early in sobriety taught you that no meeting or therapist ever would have or could have?
They say that if you put anything before your sobriety, you will lose that thing and you will lose your sobriety. And so I want to say that for the first time, I had a reason to stay sober because I love someone, and I want to build a life with them. And that's only half true because I don't get to have them if I'm not sober. And, you know, in early AA, the first year, they're like, don't date anybody new, don't move, no major life changes. I got sober in July of 2019, where I met my partner. I'm counting on my fingers. I met my partner.
One, for those, for audio listeners.
Yeah, one. The next spring, I quit my job.
2.
Then there was the pandemic.
3.
They moved up to Maine
4.
to be with me. So we moved in together in the pandemic.
4.5.
I moved to New York City.
5.
And I got a new job in New York City.
6.
All in the first 13 months of sobriety.
Wow.
And everyone was like, when I love cigarettes. And when I got sober, people were like, do not stop smoking. Mm-hmm. Like, you've done enough.
Yep.
Smoke your face off. And when my spouse moved to Maine, I was like, I got to quit smoking. They're never going to like this. So I quit smoking.
Successfully?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
For the first time. But it's like, it was a whole lot. I don't know that I would recommend doing that all at once.
Right.
But the only reason that any of that worked is because I stayed sober. And I work at sobriety every day. Like every day I choose to be sober, and it takes effort. Like I hate the stupid slogans when you come in. It's like, oh, one day at a time, let us love you until you can't love yourself. Like, you know, if you're not if you're not going forward, you're going backward, you know, like all these stupid slogans. And then like, it actually is true. Some of them for me is that like, if I'm not actively putting into my sobriety,
Oh yeah.
like I'm going the other direction. I'm going the wrong direction. And the only reason that I have any of the cash and prizes today, which is like a bank account with money in it.
Right.
And like a dog that still loves me. He was my first amends. And a spouse in a loving relationship. We own property together with my best friend who is also sober. Like the only reason I have any of this is because every day I make a choice to put my sobriety first. And when given the opportunity, I say the we version of the serenity prayer because I cannot do this alone. My best thinking got me here. Nobody comes into recovery spaces like on a winning streak. I'm not like, everything is great, I should probably stop drinking. I'm like, my life is falling the fuck apart. I can't do this by myself. And having a partner who was so patient with me when I had I freaked out. I was like, you're using the wrong kitchen towel. And they were like, this is obscene. Who was just so patient and so willing to support me on this journey as I was figuring out that not only did I put my program first, but they helped me put my program first, knowing that I was going to be a better person in the partnership.
It's beautiful.
And like, I still fuck things up.
Very important.
Yeah.
I think that thank you for answering that question, being so eloquent in how you did it, because a lot of people will hear that and go, license to do. Right? I can't tell you how many people I knew that saw my sponsor who I've had ever since I got sober, love him to death. He and his wife got together in early sobriety, dated, you know, they did the whole thing you're quote unquote not supposed to do, you know? And so many people look at people like, they're still married and still sober. They've been sober for like, I don't know, 49 years yet now, but they're not even that old. So, but yeah, no, people obviously like, I will use somebody doing something to say, if it's something I want to do, I can have the positive consequence too. Like, don't tell me about that, you know, what could happen. So thank you for that answer, because you took such an eloquent way of answering, and what I heard from what you were speaking to, that is, at the end of the day, I had to work harder because I did all of these things, because no matter what, when you get sober, if you don't put it first, all of those things that can look like the winning streak, when the switch gets flipped of sobriety turning on, everybody thinks like, oh, this is what sobriety looks like. Nah, those are like some things that get to happen as a result. What sobriety looks like is what you just said, like the amends, the putting it first, the waking up and going to your meeting that you committed to yourself every day, no matter what. Like,
yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
For people whose communities have also been a source of pain, what has rebuilding trust looked like for you in recovery?
I think the first step of that rebuilding trust is learning to trust myself again, and learning to trust my own intuition and my own gut. Because for a long time, my intuition was telling me to stay up until 5 a.m, that no one noticed. When I was working at the Equality Organization in Maine, we hosted a booze cruise for Pride, and I got to drink for free because I was an employee, and they were like, you know, have a couple of drinks, be responsible. And so I pre-gamed on the way down. And that was what my gut told me to do. That was what my intuition told me to do. And so learning to trust myself again, that I know how to handle social situations, that I don't have to be drunk to be able to fit in. I did stand-up. I sometimes do stand-up comedy, but my first time doing stand-up in Maine, I was so drunk when they finally got to me that I forgot the jokes that I had told earlier in my 5-minute set, and they had to like Bo Peep me off stage. Like, I was so drunk, I didn't remember that I'd already told that joke. So the worst has happened for me in stand-up comedy, is that like, that's Nothing else can go worse than that in stand-up comedy. So I've done it, right? And so it's learning to trust myself. Your mouth is still open.
Because you've said many things that resonate with me, but I did not try stand-up comedy at any given point.
Yeah.
But the shame of repeating yourself within a short time frame, not being aware and having to be told, is devastating. And I felt that many, many times. I was not in front of an audience of people. And
this was recorded too. I've never watched the recording. I can't. I'm too embarrassed.
I'm gonna need you to send me the link though. But being Bo Peeped off the, also listener, viewer, post sobriety, we have to be able to laugh about some of these things. Oh my God. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but the visual of you saying like, I had to get Bo Peeped off the stage. I'm both like, now I get to hold two, you know, or maybe more than two emotions in one hand, right? Like, it's like, identify, I feel the shame and embarrassment and all those things at the same time. Also, I'm sharing like the joy and laughter because I know that you're in a good, wonderful, healthy place now. And this is one of those stories where you're like, that was then, this is now.
Like, if they had a genuine Bo Peep cane, they would have done that. But instead, someone came onto the stage and was like, "You're done now." Yeah. In front of like a full house.
Bless.
Yeah. So I think it's learning to trust myself again.
Yeah.
Right. I've done stand up. Sometimes I'm funny, sometimes I'm not. At least I'm not so drunk that I don't remember it.
And no Bo Peep being off the stage? Sober?
No, I told a joke at a trans open mic about trans names. That like, why are we naming ourselves things like machete and moss and I don't know, drain pipe. And like that didn't fly in the crowd of machete and moss and drain pipe. I think it's funny.
You didn't know machete and moss and drain pipe?
No, I didn't know.
Dang.
Yeah. It's like, the joke is that like, you will know that we have comprehensive non-discrimination protection when trans people feel like we can name ourselves like Chad or Mary.
Right.
In my mind, everyone's laughing at that as they listen to this podcast.
No,
or not.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so anyway, I've not been Bo Peeped. So it's learning to trust myself. I thought a life beyond my wildest dreams was going to be like Charlie Sheen, strippers and cocaine in a hotel room that you could destroy. And it turns out a life beyond my wildest dreams is coming to visit you in your beautiful city and being in bed happily at 9:00 last night.
And you got to experience everything before 9?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I like walked around, I spent some money, I had a great meal. And I think the other part is I'm learning to trust when I came into the rooms, people are like, "Here's my phone call, call me." And I'm like, there's no fucking way you want me to call you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a stranger, I'm a hot mess. You're giving me your number and you're saying, call me anytime. I don't want anybody to call me anytime. Like, my phone is on silent. Like, do not call me anytime or do. Right. And so I'm like, there's no way that you want me to call you. And now that I have a little bit of time under my belt and I give my number to people and I say, call me anytime, I mean it. And I will stop what I'm doing and I will answer the phone. And if I miss you, I will call you back, and I mean it. And so it is also trusting that the people in my life who say they're going to show up for me are going to show up for me. And if I'm being honest and acting with integrity, I have to give other people the chance to do that too.
Very true.
A friend of mine from one of my meetings, her father just passed away super suddenly. And I found out about the Shiva and I was like, I'll be there. What can I bring? Yeah. And that's what that is the gift of this program, is that like, I get to say, I will reschedule what I have so I can be there for you because I love you.
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched on that piece, because it is very important. Gosh, it sounds like since you started being a professional of any kind, you've been doing serving people in nonprofit work, and now you're doing that professionally at GLAAD. For those of you who don't know, GLAAD is actually, I'm going to let you give the spiel, because how would you describe
the
GLAAD?
way that I don't speak?
I've got about 12 different ones.
I mean, so do we. The way that I don't speak on behalf of the transes, and I don't speak on behalf of all alcoholics, I also will not necessarily speak on behalf of GLAAD.
Okay.
GLAAD is the world's largest LGBTQ media advocacy organization. And we do consulting for businesses and corporations to be more LGBTQ inclusive. We consult with media. So if you've seen an LGBTQ character, TV, film, Broadway, that's done well, we've probably consulted there. And we help hold the media accountable when they're not having accurate representations or portrayals of LGBTQ people or LGBTQ stories. And at GLAAD, I get to lead some of our transgender storytelling work.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's really fun.
And so not only the accountability is there, because there's the very important reports that you all come out with that rate the safety and all the different things of in the media.
Yeah.
But every year the GLAAD Awards have become known as a very prestigious awards show that is an honor to get nominated, an honor to win, and one of which we've had the privilege of being in that category a couple times. And being both, I love that GLAAD fills both those spaces of holding people accountable if they're not, if they're bringing harm, but also celebrating the ones that are doing it with excellence.
Yeah.
And so
we, thank you for saying that. I'm so fortunate that I work with great people and that I love the work that I get to do. And I work with a team, and I'd been consulting for years before this. And I'm so happy and so grateful that I get to be part of this team. And I just had something.
I'm blowing it back your direction.
We were talking about GLAAD. We were talking about the media awards. It'll come back.
Fortunately, I have a follow-up question for you.
Yes.
Where do you see the most urgent need for allyship today? And what is one thing cis people still don't get?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, one of the reports, the timing is so interesting. One of the reports that GLAAD does every year is the Social Media Safety Index. And that came out in the past couple of days. And this both ranks social media platforms on how safe they are for LGBTQ people. And spoiler is that it's not great out there. I think TikTok is the best, and I don't think they have... I think they're like 50-something%.
Yeah.
And it talks about how LGBTQ people can stay safe or safer on platforms. What does privacy look like? How can we be open and vulnerable, and also still be private? And so all those reports are available on the GLAAD website, glaad.org. I work at GLAAD with 2 A's, not the sandwich bags like my father-in-law thought for a very long time. He was like, why do they need trans consulting sandwich bags?
Oh my gosh. That's a funny joke. Your other joke was funny as well. I was like in a serious mind space. But what I was going to say is that we're going to have all this linked below as well. So you don't have to do a bunch of work.
Frantic
Scroll
Googling.
down. You're going to find exactly what you need to find to follow what we're talking about here. So back to my question. Where do you see the most urgent need for allyship today?
Yes.
And what is one thing cis people still do not get?
I think when we talk about allyship, it's also being an ally to ourselves. And I'm speaking to our queers in the audience. And that means taking care of ourselves, knowing when to say no, My sponsor described people pleasing as an inability to handle someone's disappointment in you. That when I am agreeing to something out of people pleasing, I don't actually want to do it, but I cannot handle your disappointment in me if I don't do this thing. I love my sponsor. He was at our wedding.
I gotta write that down.
It'll be in the podcast later.
I know.
And so being an ally to ourselves, right? And someone I used to work with at Speak About It says that we're just complicated houseplants. Like I need water and sunshine, and I'm going to walk around later and get some water and sunshine, you know? So being allies to ourselves, I think, is really important. You have to put your air mask on first. I think other ways that we need allies to show up right now, and I will speak through a trans lens, is that trans people cannot be the only people who care about trans rights right now. Because if trans people are the only ones who are fighting for trans rights, we're not going to win. There's not enough of us. And this is where we need other people with various privileges to step up and show up and help us. And one of my passions is talking about trans inclusion in sports, which I know is very divisive right now. And one of the things that we are seeing when we talk about trans inclusion in sports and how trans bodies are being policed is that this doesn't just affect trans women. This affects anyone whose gender presentation falls outside of stereotypical norms. And so what I'm saying is this is becoming a chase to prohibit trans women from participating, but any woman who is not compliant with like white Eurocentric standards of beauty, like your womanhood is now being challenged. So this is not just about trans women. This becomes about all women. This is about bodily autonomy. This is about who gets to be a woman. This is about the assumption that people assigned male at birth are bigger, faster, stronger, more talented inherently, right? Which is deeply sexist and misogynist. All of this is rooted in white supremacy. We're not going to see bodies like Caitlin Clark getting policed for being talented. It's going to be players like Brittany Griner who are tall, who are black. And so that is my first call, is that like, this is not just about trans people. This is about all people and frankly about all women and bodies being policed. So if you're passionate about this, please join us. I think it's really easy to hate someone if you've never met someone. So if I'm the first trans person that one of our listeners is meeting, you can cross that off your bingo card. You've now met a trans person.
Right.
But we've also been running a really amazing campaign called Here We Are. And this is a video campaign. We've got 3 incredible trans people and their family who open themselves up and show vulnerability and what it's like to be trans right now. And so we'll link to that below.
Yes.
And I don't know, it feels really trite to sit here and like quote that the person like around the Holocaust who was like, first they came for you and I didn't care, you know, and then they came for this other group and I didn't care. And now they're coming for me and there's no one else to stand with me. Because as a trans Jew, it feels like especially poignant right now. Yeah. You know, like in my backpack, I have a copy of my passport, my name change, my legal name change document, my marriage license, my changed birth certificate, a copy of my college transcript, a copy of the dog's vet records, because we are afraid. We trans people, I will say me and my family, like we're afraid that we're going to have to flee our own country. And as a modern day Jew, I never thought that was going to be a concern.
At the drop of a hat.
At the drop of a hat. I have a go bag. My spouse and I have go bags in our apartment. We have a go bag in the car. Like, we're ready if we need to go at any point. And I live in New York City, and that's a privilege. And so when we talk about allyship, right? I'm not trying to scare people. Yeah. Right. Like, I'm not fear mongering. This is something that is on my mind. It's, you know, my trans family, we are talking about this. So if you're wondering what it means to be an ally, how you can be an ally right now, Laverne Cox said that every one of us has a chance to be a liberator and every one of us has a chance to be an oppressor. And so think about the ways that you are being an oppressor to others. And this is my challenge to everyone. We all have privilege. We all have different privilege. Like even you and I sitting here,
Yes.
we look the same.
I'm learning.
We have
all
different
the time.
privilege.
Yes.
Yeah. So whatever your privilege is, like how are you using that to make the world better, safer, more accessible for those around you? I do this work. I am publicly trans. I am out here because I don't want the next generation of trans people, however old they are, to have to fight as hard as we are fighting right now.
Right.
And what can you do in your communities? How are you showing up? Vote in local elections. This is where it trickles down. If you have resources, there's some incredible Black trans-led orgs that need resources right now. If this doesn't affect you because you don't know anybody who's trans, you do now.
Yeah. I want to end by, there's two things I want to say. We're out of time, but I think this is really poignant. And you may disagree with me on this, but God, sitting in all my privilege, right? Because I realize where I am on the rung. I've heard so much of the time though of like, it's not our job to teach. It's those who aren't in the targeted bodies. It's not their job to teach, the other people. However, we're seeing vast consequences of, I don't think that approach is working anymore. I get it. Yeah. It's not everyone's job to teach. But if we all go about having the attitude that you need to do the work, you need to learn, because I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this, so follow along with me, is that, I'm not speaking to anyone in like Black, queer, Muslim, whatever, and saying, you need to be a teacher, you need to be, whatever. Yeah. But what I am saying is that we have the opportunity to, I don't necessarily know that I personally agree with that sentiment and saying no one should be doing that at all, because there are a lot of people I know that really don't know where to start and feel overwhelmed in their own lives already. And yes, they are standing in privilege. But what I've realized for myself is that what I want to do is be like, you know what? If you've stayed on this podcast long enough to still be here at this, point, moment, can we give a starting place to the person that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where I try to go, is like, where can we throw a starting point?
Yeah.
That rope of, if you do want to learn and do better and you haven't started yet, and you hear that from us.
Yeah.
Where's the easiest, simplest place to start?
Share this podcast. Yes, I hear you. I had a college hockey coach who said that it is unreasonable to expect 100% from everybody every day. So if all you can give is 70%, I expect 100% of your 70%. Mm-hmm. And what I mean in this context is like, I don't expect everyone to like drop of a hat, become like the world's most amazing ally and learning everything and showing up to every march and donating to every organization. That's not how the world works. We all have capacity of what we're able to do, right? So if your capacity, not you, Patrick, but like if one's capacity is like, listen, I can go to a protest once a month, I can donate $15 to an organization once a month, like that's plenty. There are not every trans person, not every minority person who's part of a marginalized community, like is going to be an educator, is going to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. People like me are. There are professionals. I'm happy to have these conversations, to do trainings, to bring people in, to share what I know. And there are trainers, educators, people that you can bring into your work, into your corporate setting, whatever, read a book, learn from people who are different, right? I'm not saying like, please talk to the next trans person you meet and like ask them all of your questions and have them teach you how to be an ally. Cause sometimes people just want to like, like eat their cheeseburger and go home. My friend Alex Schmitter, who also works at GLAAD, said that like all trans people want is to be hot and boring and drink iced coffee. So when people say like educate yourself, it's like, find a reading list, join a book group.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How can you learn more? And it's not easy for anyone right now. Like,
yep.
It's easy for some people, like a small percentage of people, but nobody's okay right now.
Right.
Like nobody's okay. And certainly none of us who have parts of our identity or identities that are being attacked.
Yeah.
And I think this is when we need to band together more than ever. Mm-hmm. When we say, for example, the work that I'm doing, it's trans-led. We need to have trans people talking about trans rights, but we need our allies talking with us.
Yes.
Like, this is too much for us to carry, help us carry this, but center us in this approach. There's room for everybody in that. And get some sunshine and drink lots of water and rest.
Yeah.
And know the things that recharge you. I don't know. I'm just
That's
really,
perfect.
I'm really landing on this like, I don't have to do this alone if I don't want to.
Yep. I think that, the thing I would add to that is that we live in the digital age of sound bites. And as you said, like, I don't want to do this alone. So join me, and like, don't necessarily like speak for me, like support what we are saying. And so as I hear that, I'm like thinking like, what I would add to that is like, find wonderful trans people that are using their platform to speak about and educate and use the voice of like, this is our experience, this is our lived existence, what you can do to help and how you can learn, and share their content, multiply their voice.
Yeah.
Give them the boost in the algorithm.
Yeah.
Don't use their words and make your own content and be like, I'm the ally. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a way that you could like, when we talk about like, you said earlier, identify all your privilege and then give it all away. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's an example. As somebody who's like continually working on trying to identify, evaluate, boost all of our algorithm existence across all of everything that we do. I mean, who isn't, if you have a digital existence right now, whether it's like money, physical presence, or digital support, I think are the big ways that we can really obviously learning, educate yourself, so.
And start small. ACLU attorney trans icon Chase Strangio said a couple years ago, I think during the first Trump administration, that like all of this can feel so overwhelming. When we look at what's happening on a national, international scale, it's so overwhelming. We are so powerless in this. There's nothing we can do. And like, truly there is nothing Shane Diamond can do like on a national scale right now. There's arguably nothing I can do on a state level. Right. I'm one person. What I can control is what's happening in my community. I can control how I show up for my friends and family and loved ones, for my greater community. Like, I live in New York City, so what can I do for communities in New York City? How can we create community, as you said, in a digital world? Like the baby steps, this is how we're going to get there.
That's right.
We're going to topple this from the bottom up. Yeah. And that also means taking a day off when you need to take a day off.
Amen.
And staying close to your recovery, because I can't do any of this if I'm not sober.
That's right. High five. I can't reach you, but yes. Shane Diamond, thank you so much.
Patrick.
This has been an amazing conversation.
Patrick Custer. This has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much. And I hope people can see that we're both like exquisitely dressed today in beautiful cowboy boots.
Yeah. At least look at the cover of this podcast. And with that, I'll remind each and every one of you that it's never too late to start loving yourself, but you're only one decision away from a completely different life. If you felt seen today, don't keep it to yourself. Like, follow, and drop a comment about what landed with you. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you're part of it now. Let's go. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.